Friends, welcome to episode 195 of the Juicebox Podcast. I just want to take a brief moment before we start and talk about Thanksgiving. This episode's going up just a few days before the holiday in 2018, and I'm seeing a disturbing amount of blogs and podcasts and people talking about, oh, it's diabetes, Thanksgiving, you can't win, just do your best, don't worry about it if your blood sugar's high all day. I don't think any of that's necessary, and I simply don't like it. So if you have 15 minutes when you're done listening to this, go back to episode 139. It's a quick sit down that I did last year that just talked about how I was going to handle Thanksgiving. Give it a try. Don't just accept that's just diabetes. Okay, so as the fourth year, that is correct, as the fourth season of the Juicebox Podcast comes to a close here through November and December, and we reach 200 episodes, I want to take a minute to remind you, and me to be perfectly honest, that we couldn't have gotten here without the sponsors. Now, Dexcom and Omnipod have been with me forever, and I want to thank them for that. I also want to thank them for re-upping for 2019. Yes, very excited. And there's some more advertisers that are going to come on in 2019. I also don't want to forget the time that Dancing for Diabetes has been spending with us. Now, Dancing for Diabetes has had their big show, but they are still going strong, doing great work for kids with type 1 in the Florida area and beyond. Please take a minute at the end of this episode to listen to a package piece that Dancing for Diabetes made that I'm gonna put for you at the end so you can listen. I watched the video, you'll hear the audio. It made me cry. But none of this good stuff happens if you don't clicky on the linkies, right? So if you're looking for an insulin pump, you want to go to myonlypod.com/juicebox. You want a CGM? You want to see what your blood sugar is doing? I know you do. Dexcom.com/juicebox. And of course, dancingfordiabetes.com. That's dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com. Listen closely because this is going to blow your mind. Ryan has type 1 diabetes for a long time. He wanted to be a police officer. He became a police officer. He had trouble with that because of his diabetes. He had to move on. He's trying to be a police officer again in another part of the country. While he was there, you know what he decided to do? Train his own diabetes alert dog. And more. I mean, as if you'd need more, but there is more. A chock full episode. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should ever be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before being bold with insulin. And happy Thanksgiving.
My name is Ryan. I've been type 1 diabetic for about 16 years, and I always wanted to train my own service dog. So I did a couple of classes, and I read a book, and I got after it.
That's crazy. So how old are you now?
31.
31, 16. Oh, geez. This is like one of those like uneven things. Let's do 15 years about, right? Look at me. Your story is interesting, I think. The dog is really interesting, and I definitely want to get to it. But you have a bigger picture. So diagnosed around 15 years old. Was there any diabetes in your family or any autoimmune that makes this like not that surprising, or were you guys surprised?
Absolutely shocked. No family history at all.
Okay. Pretty standard presentation. You're peeing a lot. Your parents are like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And we went to the hospital, or was it? Do you have a crazy story?
Exactly. Nope. You nailed it.
You got the easy one.
Yeah.
Ryan, you're peeing a lot. Let's go to the doctor.
Yeah. And you smell really bad too.
What a bonus. Where were you like what part of the country were you living in when you were diagnosed?
I was in Northern California.
Okay. So you go to college?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so after college, you became a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And was that like kind of like a lifelong goal? Was that something you always thought about doing, or did you fall into it?
No. At 18 years old, I thought, who'd want that job? And then as I got a little older, I had some friends that were cops talk me into going for it. And I actually went back to school, and that's what I ended up going back to school to do, and I got in a little bit later when I was in my later 20s.
Okay, and so you became a police officer with and there was no problem having diabetes becoming a police officer. I know some people talk about that sometimes. They always say there's some things you can't do, but I know that there's a state trooper local to me that has type 1, and so that was never an issue. Like did you go to the academy, or did you take classes specific to being a police officer in college?
I did take specific academic courses related to police work, and then I had to go through their academy just per their requirements, and you also have to do it to be licensed or to be valid through the state.
Right. So how long are you still a police officer now?
Currently, I work in the private sector. I'm waiting for some paperwork to go through, and I'll probably be working out here in Tennessee fairly soon.
Okay, so that's what we're getting to really. Is you moved from California to Tennessee. Was the move anything to do with the trouble you had at work?
A little bit. The agency I worked for, I guess it should have been a red flag when they said, the doctor called me and said, hey, I want to hold you back 3 months when I was going through medical review. Mm-hmm. And it's required that everybody goes through medical review. And I totally get it. We want people that have good A1Cs. And obviously you don't want somebody passing out on a call for service when there's a dangerous person. And they said, well, we want to hold you back for 3 months and monitor your glucose levels. And I told them, I said, look, my A1Cs are good. I don't have the perfect number every day, every time, like most type 1s, but I haven't had any issues. And they were like, well, it was like, what are your episodes you talk about? You go to the endocrinologist, right, and you feel like the endocrinologist is like, so Humalog. Is that for type 2s? Is that oral?
You're like, I'm talking to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. and so basically they wanted to get a baseline for you to figure out what you were doing. They wanted to track your blood sugars. They didn't want you to walk into a room, pull out a gun, yell freeze, and then fall over. And that's what they were worried about. Like, hey, I'm dizzy. Would you hold this gun for a second while I pull out a glucose tablet?
Right.
Can we just pause this crime for a second, please?
Yeah, can you do me a big favor? Don't run. My blood sugar's kind of low. If you could just listen to me, that'd be great. It's one of those days, man.
Wouldn't it be wonderful though if that turned out to be if the criminal was just like, oh, this poor guy, yeah, let me just get the handcuffs on for him.
I'll jump in the back of the car for you, bud.
So there's an understandable, there's maybe they don't have a ton of experience with type 1, or maybe they do and this is just how they do it, but they put you through this review. Did you make it out of the review at some point, or how did that go?
I did. The doctor called me back and he was like, wow, I've never seen anybody with such great numbers. And I'm like, come on, I'm not the perfect diabetic. I mean, right. I have good A1Cs, between a 6.5, give or take. I'm your average daily injection. And I was like, oh, no, you're fine. We're not going to hold you back for 3 months. We'll skip you through.
Okay. And so how long? So you become a police officer. It's something you work towards, all going really well. And then it doesn't go well. How long until it doesn't go well?
I want people to know that diabetes doesn't define you. I want people to be inspired, and if they even have type 1, that they're not alone, and that we can do anything we put our hearts to.
Dancing for Diabetes wants you to know that you're not alone. If you're looking for inspiration, go to dancingfordiabetes.com.
I felt a little uncomfortable the first day of the academy. The guy who came up who had us do the physical portion of it, he was like, the guy who trains us in our defensive tactics, and they run and have us do push-ups and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'll make sure you can catch the guy who runs away. Although, right. Ryan, if you just drive after him with your car and just kind of give him a doink with the door, I think that works in the movies. That probably works in real life too. So, but so you're going through your physical fitness right on the first day. You're not this guy's picture of what physical fitness is. Is that about what happened?
No, I was actually runner-up for the athletic award, but he was like, I want you to keep your glucometer up here in the front of the class so I know where it is at all times. And I said, sir, I really appreciate your concern, but I really prefer to keep it on me and on my at all times. Yeah. And I have my glucose levels, and if you ever need it, and if I'm ever incapacitated, which knock on wood has never happened,
Right.
in my right pocket, and that just didn't bode well.
So that's interesting. So you're a standout in the class, athletically, and yet he needed that meter with him for whatever reason in his mind. And so, did you keep the meter with him? Do you think that was the first time you were like, or did he win? Where did that meter end up staying?
Up in front of the class.
You made it through the class, okay? Or did you not even get through the class because of this person?
No, I was doing okay in the class. It was just, I just told them, look, at times I just got to do my thing. It'll take me 10 seconds or less.
Right.
And he had gone through a very traumatic incident off duty, and he came back to the academy. He was gone for a couple of weeks while everything had to get cleared administratively. And I started checking my blood sugar right when we were done with the physical portion. I would check because I noticed I was starting to have a pattern of lows on the schedule and just learning the routine of the academy. And long story short, he yelled at me for checking my blood sugar in front of the whole class. So it just wasn't, I felt it was rather frivolous.
Yeah. And so is that something, how did you handle that, I guess is my question next. When that happens, where do you go from there?
I was really upset. I mean, I was ready to take off my belt and yell at him and say, "Hey, this is how you want to do it." I was really upset. I mean, I walked off and he walked over and later apologized. And he actually, after that, he was actually a great guy. Later on he just said, "Well, I'm sorry. I thought I was looking out for your best interest." And that wasn't the worst part. It was more actually after I graduated, you go through what's called a field training officer. You have basically, it would be like you're the senior guy running the podcast. So you tell me all your tricks and how you do it. And this is what you got to do, your paperwork, this, and they evaluate you. And
okay.
This guy, he wrote me up for checking my blood sugar in the car, and he actually documented it. And I'm like looking at the administration, like, isn't this liability on your part?
Should he not be admitting to us?
Yeah, and then one night I went to check my blood sugar in the report writing room, which is a sterile environment. I mean, it's safe. It's inside the station.
Right.
And I'm just typing up my report, so I stop real quick, and there's hand sanitizer there, and I poke my finger real quick, and he just goes, can you not do that here? And I'm thinking to myself, if I go into that wall as I walk into the bathroom, you're going to be out of a job. And, I don't want to mask the law enforcement community. They've got a hard job. But,
sure. But do you think it was a personal thing for him? Like, do you think the blood threw him off? Or do you think was he making a business decision when he said, "I don't want you checking your blood sugar here"? Or do you think it just made him uncomfortable? Did you get a feeling?
I don't know. I mean, he just wanted to scream and yell about everything. So that's prerogative.
This guy was just looking to yell, and there you were with your blood sugar, and you were an easy target for him. Was he yelling at other people as well, just over different things?
Yeah, I mean, he was an interesting person. So
okay, so you're working. I mean, you're on the street, right? But you get written up for checking your blood sugar, which is crazy. And is there a point then when you think like, maybe I have like a union representative here, or I don't see. I don't think there's a wrong answer to how you handle things. I just think it's in a real world situation. It's interesting. It's like, when do I rock this boat? Like, do I just sit back and let this guy have his way and try to keep the peace on my end, or because you know what I mean? Because once you push back in a real way, you're involved in a different situation then. And it's not your fault when that happens, but it still needs to be considered when you make the decision.
This is how it works. You're correct. They have a very strong union there. And I wasn't off probation. I was still in training once you're out of the academy. And the union basically, what that informally translates to, that unless something really, really big happens, they don't really care. I told the supervisor, and then I told another supervisor, and they just looked at me and kind of brushed it off. They didn't really acknowledge it. They didn't document it. So I resigned as a result of it. I just said, this job is not worth my life. It's not worth my kidneys. It's not worth my neuropathy, or, I don't want to develop neuropathy.
All these things.
Yeah. Excuse
So
me.
were you actually, so the pressure stopped you from testing when you wanted to, and you realized that was what it was going to be, and you didn't want to be involved in it. Now, that sucks, because that's a lot of effort, right? Like, you went to school, you put in that effort. You went to the academy, you put in that effort. Like, how much time did you have into getting to that spot, do you think?
Oh, years.
Yeah. It really sucks. I don't know what to say other than that. It really sucks. I'm sorry. But now you think you're back at it. You think you're in a new place in the country, and you're looking for a job in law enforcement again. You think you're close to one?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I can't say too much because I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee, and one of by sheer fate would have it, one of my good friends I ended up meeting out here actually works for Nashville Metro, completely unrelated, just coincidental. And, he kind of talked me into applying. I told him very openly about my experience, and he was like, well, here's the thing in Tennessee. If you do that here, you're going to get fired. He goes, if that would have happened to you here, that person would have been fired, both of them. And if you would have gone and formally told the supervisor. And I openly talked about backgrounds because before you get into any capacity of law enforcement, they do a very thorough background check. Mm-hmm. I mean, they come to your house, they have a 50-page packet, and I openly wrote about my experience. And I felt like if it was going to negatively reflect me, then I don't want to be here. I'm more than happy to be here. I want to work just as hard. Athletically, I mean, I'm not a gazelle. I'm not going to make the Olympics anytime soon, but I was runner-up for some of it. I'm not a fast sprinter. That's what worked against me. But everything else I was pretty good at. And I openly talked about it. And I was like, look, I was a great wrestler in high school. I was looking at going forth. I still do a lot of martial arts. It doesn't restrict me athletically. It doesn't restrict my strength. There's been Olympians, as you've interviewed. Yeah. And they didn't care. They were like, okay, well, we think you'll have a different experience here.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. And I agree with what you said, too, because I often think that, like, if you have to put it out there however it is, because if someone doesn't like it, like you said, I mean, use the words I would have used. Like, I don't want to, if you don't like this, I don't want to be here. Why would I go through this again and torture myself again? Let's find out on day one if you're the kind of person who's not going to want me around, and let me get out of this, before I even get in and waste all that time. I think that's really smart. I really do. And look how well it worked out for you. You found people who said, no, don't worry about that. You're good. That's really excellent. So you're in the process now there.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. Good for you. That's excellent. So how long is the distance in between time? So how long ago did you leave the other department?
About 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And so did you consider not doing it in between then? And was it something you kind of gave up on until you met this person who talked you into trying?
Yeah. You're pretty much right on that.
That's a shame. Well, that's a shame. I mean, it sucks that, it sounds like you would have been one of the leaders in that situation, and then this guy sees your blood sugar meter, and that it just sucks. It really does. I'm so happy that you feel like you've found a place that's not going to be like that. Did that experience at that first department, did that change anything about how you felt about your diabetes or how you treated it? And did you find yourself being less public about it or anything like that? Let me read you an email I just received. Hi, Scott. Thank you for your podcast and for helping us to be bold with insulin. Our daughter was diagnosed in January of 2014 when she was 4 years old, and we've been taking pretty good care of her with A1Cs that have ranged between the mid-6s and the mid-7s. Yesterday, at her quarterly endo visit, we got an A1C of 5.5. We credit a lot of that to your podcast, but also to Dexcom and Omnipod. Your podcast gave us the confidence to use these tools the way they were meant to be used. Now, when I get this email, I am incredibly inspired to think that people are out there using the Omnipod the way it's supposed to be used. Temp basals, extended boluses, no tubing, not tethered to anything, feeling the freedom, living life, and getting results like the ones you heard about here in this email. It is so easy to try it for yourself because Omnipod offers a free, no-obligation demo. All you have to do is go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or click on the links in your show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com. Fill in the tiniest bit of information about yourself. It is really just your name and your address. And Omnipod will send directly to your door a pump. You take the pod and you place it on your body and you wear it for days so that you can see just how wonderful it is. Once you've decided it is wonderful, you just keep going with the process. And the next thing you know, you're writing me an email about your A1C and how it's 5.5. Of course, your results may vary, but the demo is 100% free and there's no obligation, so give it a try. That experience at that first apartment, did that change anything about how you felt about your diabetes or how you treated it? And like, did you find yourself being less public about it or anything like that?
No, I just kind of figured, that guy's going to end up getting what he deserves when he has to go to a court of law. He's going to have to answer to something, because those people never last throughout the law enforcement community. You might get away with it once or twice, but eventually you're going to start stacking up complaints, and the laundry list is going to build, and you're going to get reviewed one day. Something's going to come up, and they're going to look at, wow, hey, Scott has about 5 complaints, and Ryan over here has about 35, and they've been working the same district, same time. Maybe we need to look at Ryan.
Look at that a little bit. And also, it didn't change you personally. Like, really, you didn't find yourself being more private about it or anything like that?
No, I wanted to go get a service dog. I grabbed K9. I ended up in this job I'm working now. I'm basically working in Tennessee. They have a very big, it's not security. You're actually considered private duty law enforcement, but they have a very big industry out here for it. And I ended up getting, by sheer coincidence, paired up with some retired canine handlers that I could kind of pick their brains about, guys that were trained in scent detection for all kinds of stuff, drugs, bombs. And it's the same theory. Essentially our blood sugar goes, the second it goes high or low, there's a scent. So you're just applying that training in a different context. And
so you think to yourself, because you said your injections, right? You still do injections, and do you have a glucose monitor?
Yes, sir. No CGMs and daily injections.
Okay, so you're pretty old school, but you decide you want to try to get a service dog. You found out they were incredibly expensive, I guess.
Yeah, 20 to 40,000.
That seems like overcharging. If your dog costs more than your car, you're in trouble, I think. I don't care what it does, by the way.
That's a college education.
If you found me a flying dog, I wouldn't pay $40,000 for it, because I'd be like, that dog's just going to fly away anyway. So, okay, so you look into it, really expensive. And this is very important for people to know, there are plenty of people who will try to take advantage of you and overcharge you for a service dog. The process of picking a reputable place is very, very important, or you could end up with, your blood sugar goes low, the dog pees on the carpet, and you're out $40,000. But you figured out how to train it yourself. So this is incredible. So first of all, what made you think you could do it? Was it having the conversations with the guys you were paired with who had done it in the past?
Yeah, so a while back when I was actually working in law enforcement, I had a dog search a car, and I hear this, the suspect's in the back of my car, meaning, the car's clear. And the dog, I hear the handler go, no. And I hear the dog's paws kind of like, like if it was scratching at a door. The dog bit the steering wheel. And I worked with another canine handler that was leaving the department, and he gave up his dog. He surrendered his dog. And I'm like, and that's your dog. Like, they make movies about this. You don't give up your dog. That's like a Disney movie.
You're supposed to move to a farm with that dog, I think. And
oh yeah, if we could write a story or something, we could really make this big. And anyways, I ended up getting paired up with the guy at a job site, and we had some time to kill, and we were waiting. We were just talking, and he goes, yeah, I'm a retired canine handler out of Indiana. I moved here, after I retired, blah, 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 blah. And I said, oh, really? I said, hey, ironically enough, I didn't even pick him out. It was my significant other, Gina. She was like, when we moved to Tennessee, it's very pet friendly. And I said, I want to rescue a dog from the pound. Mm-hmm. And that's where I found Baylor. And Baylor was about 6 years old when we adopted him. And he was a mess, and he had been returned to the pound. I didn't know too much of the circumstances. They later on told me, once I brought him in with the service vest and showed him all the videos, everything I did, the lady told me, because I promised her, she cried when I adopted him, and I promised her I would take him back there and I would take great care of him. And she told me a little bit about his background, and they just said he wasn't a good dog. He was surrendered with his brother, and they said he was really destructive. And one of the things people don't understand about working dogs is you have to have a dog that has prey drive or high energy, because if they're not going to work.
Yeah, my dogs are laying around right now in 2 different piles, so I don't think that I could get them to do anything, to be perfectly honest. Coming here, if I don't want to say it out loud because they'll end up with me, but I don't even know that walking across the room would motivate them. There's food over here, and they'd be like, it'll be there later, won't it? And so what kind of dog is Baylor?
He is a lab, and I think he's a pit mix because he's got a big, broad chest. But he's got the stocky legs and the long lab nose and body. So you didn't just adopt a dog. You adopted a hard luck dog. Like, this dog had been given away by somebody, picked up by somebody else, and that person had come back and been like, hey, I chose the wrong dog. Please take this one back again. And so he was kind of a 2-time loser by the time you got him. And you changed his life and yours, I imagine. So what's the first step? Is the first step just getting him to be like a better pet, like a more compliant animal, I guess, is the beginning part of it? Or do you just dive right in with the blood sugar stuff? No. So what the canine handler suggested I did, because I'd taken a class for a diabetic alert service dog, and this class was actually intended for people that were interested in this charity, but we were moving from California, so we weren't going to be eligible, which I found out, of course, at the end of the class. And I'd read a book, and I found online some more information on how to make samples and everything. And this guy goes, hey, so this is what, he was the retired canine handler out of Indiana that I got paired up with. And I told him all about him. And he goes, so start breaking them in off leash. I go, the dog's a mess. I go, I can't even walk him. I remember one night I was walking, and he's pulling, and somehow he ended up into a car. I'm like, Baylor, you were wearing me out, bud. I mean, he was like a parked car. Who does that?
Was there ever a moment in the beginning where you thought, this is why this dog's been returned to the so many times?
Tina goes, you're going to try him? That's what she said to me. She goes, are you sure? And I said, hey, the dogs aren't perfect. I've seen them work in action. I've seen them do some amazing things, and they're never going to be. So anyways, he said, hey, get a prong collar and start breaking them in. He gave me some tips. He said, start breaking them in off the leash. And as soon as I started breaking them in off the leash, it took about 3 days, and he really started to excel. And then more obedience commands, because you have to remember, I had to think to myself, like, I'm taking a 95-pound dog out in public. Mm-hmm. I have to be in control of this dog, or who knows, what could happen.
Your well-intentions turn into a lawsuit, and the dog's hanging off someone's leg, and you're like, whose dog is that? And you walk away. That's how I would handle it, by the way, if it went wrong. Oh my God, someone's dog's gone crazy. Goodbye.
I don't know how that tag got on there. That's not my number.
Insane. Don't call my house. No, but I mean, listen, it's obviously very responsible and obvious. Like, you can't go out in the world. That's a big animal, and like you said, like if he decides to do something you don't want him to do, that's not a good situation. So you get him. His obedience training came along pretty quickly for you.
Once I started breaking him in off leash, it started to click. And I told him what I had intentions of doing, but I was struggling with it. And he goes, well, this is going to sound cheesy, but once you start to break them in and you guys do more obedience training, you guys are going to bond a lot more. And once you get them broken in more to the service animal training, if it's a good fit, you guys will really take off. And one of the things I've noticed with all the handlers I've worked with, and the guys, talking to them their experience and watching the ones who do work well in public with their animals, regardless what it is the ones that do well have a good relationship. It's that simple.
Well, it makes sense. It really does. Listen, how much so people don't get too excited while they're listening and be like, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to teach my Lapa, whatever those dogs are called, to find out my blood sugar. So how much actual time and effort do you think you put into, like, if you had to break it down into months and hours, how much effort did it take to train Baylor to be a diabetes service dog for you?
I would say approximately 6 to 8 months, approximately. And I was putting in, I tried to keep the training sessions around 30 minutes, sometimes an hour.
Right.
It just kind of depended on his attention span, or I'd try to break it down to where I'd be doing 25 minutes, and then I'd if he just wasn't having a good day, which is going to happen, then I would stop and I would say, all right, let's do this later. Yeah. So I would, gosh, I didn't think the hours, but
it's a lot. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a daily, and it's not something you do on Monday and then forget about till next week. Like it's a real constant. It's a real constant responsibility, I guess, once you decide to do it. So what happened? So are you just still amazed? Like I would still look down once in a while and be like, oh my God, I trained this dog to do this thing. That I would be amazed by that personally. But like, how does it work for you in your day-to-day life? How does he help you?
Well, I don't take him everywhere with me, but he helps me tremendously. Down the road, I would like to switch to Dexcom and CGM and all that, Omnipod. But, I mean, there's been times, when you're having those bad days and you're chasing that high and then you're chasing that low. And what I didn't know at the time, and I thought he wasn't performing correctly at first, I wanted him to notify me. I set my numbers at 80 and 180. But what I didn't realize is that they can read ahead of our glucometers and our CGMs. So, example, you check Arden's blood sugar. And let's say you didn't have the Dexcom, the great technology that they produce. Let's say, and you check it, and she's at 85, and you're like, oh, you're going to bed, your blood sugar's at 85, this is perfect. And she's like, but Dad, I feel kind of funny, and I feel like I'm going low. No, just ignore it, you're fine. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, she's at 40. They can detect that when I've had this doesn't happen all the time. This has happened a couple of times off the top of my head, but Baylor has caught me when I've been at 120, and then I didn't believe it at first. I thought he wasn't working, and then I'd check my blood sugar 20 minutes later, and I'd be down going 85, and I'm like, yep, you're going low. Your blood sugar's rapidly dropping, or couldn't believe it.
He has a Predictive Low Alerts, which is something they just added to the new Dexcom G6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when it tells you like 10 minutes before you're going to get low that you're going to get low. But that's amazing that Baylor does it too. That's it's fascinating, actually. What do you think he senses? Is he actually, because your blood sugar is legitimately 120, in that moment, let's say, I guess there's something about your physiology that gives off that it's happening but hasn't happened yet, or is it a scent?
So yeah, all I know is in the class what they told us was the second your blood sugar goes low or the second your blood sugar goes high, you instantly produce some sort of scent. Mm-hmm. And our range of smell cannot smell that. The dogs can smell approximately, I can't remember the one guy I heard out of the SEALs. He worked with dogs in the SEAL program, and I can't remember if he said 30 times better or 300 times better. But The point is, way better than us, their range of smell. So it has something to do with that. I don't know all the science. I just know how to make the samples, and that's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And so how do you do that? How do you make the samples, like to train him with? Okay, I don't know if I can do this in 2 minutes, but the other day, and you can see this as a blog post on my website. I'll put a link to that. But the other day, Arden and I went to lunch, where Arden had chicken and waffles. So using the data that we get back from Arden's Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, we were able to go into, I'm going to look here, I want to make sure I get this right. We were able to go into the restaurant with a blood sugar around 120, and 1, 2, 3, 4 hours later, Arden's blood sugar was still right at 120. She had waffles. This was a weird meal. Waffles, potato chips with cheese, real syrup, and we never, ever once counted a carb. How did I do that? Super simple. Pre-bolused, watched the Dexcom for responses, stayed fluid, gave more insulin when needed. It's all spelled out in the blog post. It's really easy to understand there. That's at ardensday.com. It's actually, ardensday.com/blog/waffle, but I'll put links in the show notes here. That's not the point, though. The point is, if I tried to bolus for a waffle with real syrup after an appetizer of potato chips with cheese, I got to tell you, I would have botched that without Dexcom. I totally would have botched it without Omnipod because we did boluses and temp basals and things like that. But this ad is about Dexcom. Go to dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more. Or go check out the blog post and scroll to the bottom. You can click on a link for Dexcom there. If you go to that blog post and see Arden's graph from those waffles and don't think, I want one of those, I'd be really surprised.
So you need to have a clear mouth. And when I say clear mouth, I mean you can't have soda, coffee on your breath, obviously no alcohol, for about 30 minutes beforehand. And you pick your numbers. So mine was 80 and 180. And then when you make that, you buy sterile gauze pads and you place them in your mouth, soak them in your saliva. You'll probably have to drink some water because you'll be like, cotton mouth, dying. And you throw them in the freezer. And then I purchase sterile 6-ounce bottles, similar to like a small travel carry-on, like for the airport sized shampoo bottles, but they were sterile. And I made 3 samples, meaning I made a high, a low, and I made a fake one because when I was training him, I didn't want him to just paw me for treats. So that's how I did that.
That's crazy. And so you make these ahead of time, and then how do you? So you just So what's next? I take the sample, and what do I do with it to trade them?
So I just went with high. And my theory was, I don't know if this is accurate, and I'm sure there are better people in the world that have more information on this. A lot of first responders I talk to, paramedics, cops, EMTs, say when a blood sugar goes high, when they have a diabetic, they can always smell it on them, which is not always true. I've never been able to smell it, but other people have. So I figured, obviously, if we can smell it, the dog can smell it plus some.
It'll be
so
easier,
I went with high first.
Okay. And so you just, what do you just, like, give him the sample and I don't know, like what's next? Like I get if you want him to sit down and you get him to sit and you go, okay, you've sat, that's great, here's a treat, boom. But you want him to bark or come for you or something when he smells this smell? Is that the idea?
So I trained him to paw me, and the theory was that way if I'm in public, he's not distracting, or if I ever had to take him into a business-like setting or a play or, I don't know, the movies, who knows?
Yeah. And so you're in bed tonight and your blood sugar goes over 180. The dog wakes you up?
That's the one thing I could never get him to do. There's been a couple times he's barked at me in the middle of the night. Right. It's very rare. Okay. But they do tell you that with concealing yourself in your covers, and also he's always been a heavy sleeper. I mean, if someone breaks into this house, I would be surprised if he just sleeps it off. And that's just always how he's been. And I adopted him at 6. He's now, I think he's 7, 8, I don't know, right around there. Right. But he's always been a sound sleeper, and he's a little bit of an older dog. Looking back on it, I would have actually woken up in the middle of the night and woke him up. And once I got him dialed in with the training, with the pawing and the smelling the samples, I would have actually done that.
Yeah, I see. Well, listen, I mean, there's a lot to think about, I guess. And so when you're low, do you know you're low? Like, what number do you feel your low's at?
Most of the time. Every once in a while I'll catch them real early. I know I'm starting to feel a little funny. Like this morning, I worked nights last night. So I woke up right before talking to you, and I kind of felt a little funny. Baylor's got to go to the bathroom, so he's distracted by that, goes to the bathroom, comes in the house, paws me, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I better go check. And I check, and I'm at 85. It's like, okay, I know based on my training, based on my experience, it's like you with Arden. You're like, our blood sugar always likes to drop at this time. Right. And now I just kind of have a poor man's Dexcom. No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, it's funny how you learn though. Like really, like after having experiences over and over again, you really do get to that. I always think of it this way. I see people talk about the Dexcom has a warm up period, right? You put it on, and you wait 2 hours before you can start using it, and I always hear people like, oh, this is the worst, these 2 hours. And I don't feel that way anymore because I have a reasonable expectation that I understand what's going on. And with a couple of finger sticks, I can still actually maintain the same, sort of like the same basic rhythm that I had with the CGM I can have without it. Now, could I do it all day like that? I could, but then I'd be testing again like a lunatic and thinking about it all the time. But I do think you learn from your experiences, and I think that makes total sense. So you're falling, you feel it, but if you don't feel it, he comes and has he ever come to you and you've been so low that you kind of can't care that he's with you and pawing at you, or does it always help you move along? That's interesting. So
one time, right after we had just bought a house and we were in the process of moving, and it was the first time we bought a house, Gina and I, and you know how stressful it is. You know, underwriting, insurance, all that fun adult stuff. Not.
Hey, listen, I just got my taxes today. I know what I owe, so I'm not doing great with being an adult today either. So, I know what you're talking about.
And anyways, Gina was working nights at the time, and there's nobody else home. And I got off the couch, and I felt a little funny, and I didn't think much of it because I was focused on unpacking, and I got to work tomorrow, all these things. And as I walk away, Baylor paws me in the back of my calf. Mm-hmm. And I thought, honestly, he kind of fell or it was a fluke, or I didn't want to believe him because I was trying to get my other stuff I need to get done. And then I walked into the kitchen. He follows me into the kitchen, and he starts staring at me, starts making eye contact. And then he kind of starts walking towards me, and then he doesn't corner me. Like when I say that, people think he's growling and he's trying. No. He then gets a little bit more aggressive and comes up and starts cutting me off. Mm-hmm. And then he paused me again when I stopped. And that's when I said, okay, you need to check your blood sugar, because he's getting awfully aggressive about it. Meaning he's not getting aggressive in the sense of he's not growling, he's not snarling. He's making eye contact with me. He's giving me all these signs.
Right.
And sure enough, I'm glad he was there, because I think I was at 40 or not a good number, 40 or 60.
Right. And it's so the lower you got, the more aggressively he's trying to get your attention. It's so like cutting you off, like you trying to walk, and he's like, no, you can't walk away. We haven't done the thing with the blood sugar yet. So when does he stop? So your blood sugar is low when you test. Does he, I don't know, what's the next, like, does he see you test and then leave you alone after that? Or does he kind of stay with you and keep reminding you about the low blood sugar until it's back up again?
No, typically he'll leave me alone. And the one thing I've noticed about dogs, especially working with them, and I trained a couple dogs after this, not for diabetic alert, but they're very receptive to our patterns. So you grab your keys. The dog thinks, oh, they're going to take me out. They're leaving. Maybe I can con them into get me into a walk. Yeah, you grab their leash. They know they're going to go somewhere. And I've noticed that with Baylor, that after he sees me grab my black glucometer pouch, he seems to leave me alone. He'll sometimes still come up and paw me a little bit, but for the most part...
That's what he expects. That's what he's trying to accomplish, to get you to pick up that pouch.
Yeah, and I didn't teach him that. Right. That was just kind of what came with the territory once we started working together more.
That's interesting. It really is. After all the work and everything, and you have, is it a benefit? Is he a real benefit in your life? Or have you ever looked back and thought, wow, that was more work than it's been worth? Or... I'm interested to know, like, how valuable do you find having a dog?
Yeah, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
It's a big, even now, can you imagine a day where you have a glucose monitor and you think, I don't need the dog anymore? Or do you think you don't have a glucose monitor because you have the dog?
I don't have a glucose monitor because I like to do a lot of the martial arts, the jiu-jitsu, and I'm worried it will get torn off during like live sparring and stuff like that. And I'm also going to wait to see my insurance where that goes. But I have heard that when people switch to things like what you're talking about, CGMs and Dexcoms, that people that have had dogs in the past and have that, they stop going low and they stop going high, and the dog stops working.
Oh, the Dexcom breaks the dog. That's interesting. Like, because it takes away, because once you, so now that's an interesting idea. So once you don't have the highs and lows and the variability anymore, because the technology helps you get past that, then the dog's like forgets all about it because it's not happening as much. That's interesting.
Well, they say that, but
it could happen.
I worked with a guy too that said he had to get his dog recertified. It was a drug dog, and he was like, hey, I hadn't had a bust. I'll keep it PG because I know it's his family. I haven't had a bust of this type of stuff in a long time. I'm really nervous about my dog getting certified because they have to get certified for a certain accuracy.
Okay.
And sure enough, the dog walked in the room and nailed it right away.
Okay.
So I don't know.
You don't know if it could happen or
what
not.
they say. Yeah.
Right. But it's still an interesting concept, that the idea that you could kind of, if you don't use it, you lose it kind of, concept with anything, really. I guess if you don't do it enough, it goes away a little bit.
My name is Elizabeth, and at 10 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Shortly after, inspired by my middle school dance class, I came up with the idea to host a show to raise funds and spread awareness about diabetes. And Dancing for Diabetes started and has grown ever since.
You are only about 10 minutes away from hearing that entire recording. I'm telling you, it is spectacular. dancingfordiabetes.com. Dancing, the number 4, diabetes.com. You're married, or you guys are just together, or you're married?
We're trying to get together. That we're gonna wait probably till after I get through all this trying academy stuff and
Gotcha.
The schedule cools down and I can get time off.
But you own a house. You live together for a while. I was wondering, like, how involved is she with your care? Like, is that something you share with another adult, or is it something you keep to yourself?
No, Gina will definitely tell me at times if she sees something like, hey, I think you need to go check. But other than that, I mean, I try to do everything myself. And with Baylor, I specifically wanted to train Baylor because who the dog typically trains with is who they're going to bond with. So I told her, I was like, no, I don't want to do anything. I mean, she'll take him for walks here and there, and she'll take him out to go to the bathroom. But beyond that, I mean, I was the one who really wanted him. So
yeah, I was just trying to decide how my wife would feel if we had to take my daughter's insulin pump for a walk. He's sort of like your diabetes tech, right? Like what would I do if I had to like clean up and feed it? Like, I'd be like, oh. Does having a service dog preclude him from being a pet, or do you get both of those worlds?
You do get both those worlds. So here's the thing with learning dog behavior. When dogs aren't working, they're at home, and that's when they get to be a dog. That's when they get to. He's actually good friends with their cat, Rainey. Mm. They're buds. They play tag outside, and at certain times, he's an absolute pet. I mean, if he jumps on the bed and he's laying there and you're watching TV, he's a pet. He's laying next to you. You're petting him. He's happy. But the thing is, when he's laying on that bed and he's next to you, the chances of that dog working is minimal to none because they work for your affection and your attention.
Oh, I see. So if he feels connected to you at the moment, he might be less apt to do the work that you've trained him to do.
Correct. And that's what they tell you about.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of the first things that organization does is, like, let's say you and Arden want a dog. You guys go through the paperwork. You guys, okay, you're selected. They take you out to the beach with an allotment of dogs, and they see which one you bond with. And it works the same way in police, military typically. They don't just take a dog and say, hey, this dog's yours, Scott. This is going to be your dog. They pair it up with your personality, what they think, and how you communicate, and how this dog is, and their profile, and what they think is going to be a best fit.
I see. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's like a dating situation. You can't just point from across the room and be like, you'll work, because it doesn't work that way. You got to find a bond. You got to find, common ground, something to start with, right? Something to build on, not just you look good to me, or I like what color that dog is. I guess I'm wondering about, like, with just managing with shots and everything, because it's interesting, because you talk about you'd like a pump and you would like, maybe a glucose monitor and a pump, but at the same time you don't have them. And you do have some lows. So what do you think is the biggest, I don't know, what's the biggest impediment when you're doing injections? Like, what do you find to be the thing you wish you could make go away?
Oh, Lantus, versus a pump, as you know, you can adjust to your needs, and everybody's needs are going to be different. So that's a great thing. Versus Lantus, you're either slave to, if it's like you have seasonal allergies and it shoots sky high on you, you're kind of stuck with that dose. Versus if you're going low all the time, then you're slave to eating every 2 hours or every 45 minutes or who knows,
Yeah, and so you think the basal insulin is the thing you would like to have more control over the most. So what's the thing about injections that you like the most? Like, what do you think you'd miss if you went to a pump?
I would just be worried about it getting ripped off in either the line of duty or during grappling practice. I did have about 10 years ago, I had a mini-med pump.
Okay.
And I was so lean. The problem was I had to do the child inserts, and they were metal. They were the ones. And if I didn't use those, they would kink. And then, of course, when I went to practice, those hurt really bad, especially in any sort of aggressive sparring. It was really difficult.
Well, I would say that things have changed pretty significantly since then. I get your concern. I really do. I think that you would easily be able to, I mean, if you chose an Omnipod, you mentioned it before, if you chose that, I think you'd easily be able to put it somewhere where that wouldn't be an issue. I know some kids that play like football with them, and they'll like, there's like this band, I don't know if it's called a band, but there's a wrap you put around it on your arm, for instance, that keeps it from shaking and pulling off when you get tackled. When my daughter knows she's going to go play softball, sometimes she keeps it more on her stomach, so that it, like it's not a place where people grab at you or touch you or something like that. I think it would be something that you would find that you'd look back one day and think, oh, that wasn't really a big deal. And I only bring that up not to sell you an insulin pump, but because I think you fall into a really interesting category. You've had diabetes for 15 years. You had an experience a while ago with the technology. It's a lot different now. And it's working for you. What you're doing is working for you, and you're comfortable. I always get concerned. I always try to stay cognizant of the idea of, I don't want to look back one day and think, what did everybody move forward and I didn't notice? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's you still know what it's all about. But I saw it with a friend once who, did his injections, and then a couple years ago, finally even just got away from the old insulin. It was at Novolog, couldn't figure it out, didn't know what they were doing. It was a real, a real hardship for him. But I think had he moved along, like, I would not switch for the sake of switching. Like, if a new pump came out tomorrow, I wouldn't just be like, oh, give me that one because it's new. But I mean, and I think Omnipod and Dexcom know this very well about how I feel. If somebody comes out with something that's that much better than what they're doing, I would have to look at it, because I would want to stay current. And hopefully these companies that I like so much stay current on their own, and staying with them is staying current. But I don't want to get into a situation where I'm the old timey like diabetes person who's like, I have this, and people are like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. So I wouldn't want you to get caught in that space, like that mindset of like, this is good enough, because some of the new stuff is a lot better, in my opinion,
Yeah, I do want to check it out. I'm going to wait to see if I get hired on here. And then, of course, that's one of the things I thought about in becoming a peace officer is, working for the government, you're not really good medical.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I'm going to kind of wait and see what's up through the academy, because your life changes a lot after that. But I'm going to try to go and check that out. Ironically enough, I met a really nice young family, and they had, I think he's about 1 or 2, and he's just been newly diagnosed type 1, not in the family at all. And they're going to go Omnipod, Dexcom. And I turned them on to your show, too. I said, hey,
thank you.
Listen to a show. It's got a lot of great information. I mean, I don't even have an Omnipod, and I've learned great stuff about it, stuff I didn't know. So,
well, that's excellent.
Thank
you. It's very much my pleasure. So that's interesting. So even though you're not using the technology that we use, the stuff we still talk about is still valuable for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I love learning about new technology. I just can't figure out Skype to save my life, but
we got on eventually.
I work till 5 a.m. All right, give me some slack.
I actually think you're doing great. I actually think you've got that good I'm tired energy going right now, which is it's just you trying to stay awake. But so do you have something? Does something pop into your head, like something we talk about here that you were actually able to take into your own life that's not technology related, like kind of maybe one of the tenets of the ideas that you use with just injections?
Yeah, no, totally. I don't know why I never put this together. So when I was on the insulin pump, they always talk about pre-basal or pre-bolus. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, oh man, my blood sugar's high again. I took a bunch of insulin, and then my numbers never come out right when I eat carbohydrates, and my blood sugar's high. Oh it's
it's hilarious because it doesn't have anything to do with the pump. Like, it's called pre-bolusing, but you could pre-inject just as much, you know, and in the end, it's just that concept, right? Like, if the insulin doesn't start working right away, you need to give it a chance to sync up with the carbs. Arden and I just had I would say a pretty serious conversation yesterday for the first time. Like, I am very much just sort of like, she picks things up as we go, and I don't sit down and, you know, I don't give her like, now here's your diabetes lesson. You know, I've never done that with her. But yesterday it just became clear to me that I needed her to kind of move along with me a little bit. And so I sat her down and I gave her a bigger overview than she had in the past, I guess. So she's, you know, closer to 14 than 13. And she came down the other day, and I had been taking care of her blood sugar as I would. And she came down for breakfast. She was hungry. She said to my wife, you know, I need to eat. And my wife had not been involved with the blood sugar at all. And my wife took the words, I need to eat, as I'm low. And my daughter just meant, I'm really hungry. and so my wife sort of like, she didn't panic, but she very quickly made her food that was, you know, higher in carbs situation, and not anything different than what we normally would have eaten. But she didn't pre-bolus her because she thought she was low. And it just all kind of happened really quickly. And so I came back into the room and I was like, hey, what's going on? She's like, she's going to eat this. And I was like, okay. And I started to pick up the thing to give her insulin, and the food was ready already. And then her blood sugar shot up, and we spent a couple of hours getting it back down again. It was not easy. You know, it was one of those crappy roller coaster situations. And so later in the day, I sat with Arden and I said, look, you have to understand that just because just because someone says it's okay, here's the food, I said, you still know, right? And I was like, you know. And she's like, yeah. And I said, you have to pre-bolus for that food. And said, it's never going to work out if you don't. And she's like, right. And I said, you needed to stick up for yourself a little bit there. Even though it's mom, you needed to tell her, hey, wait, I don't think I can just start eating this right now without this insulin. And I showed her some of the reasons why, and she was really receptive and understanding of it. I didn't overwhelm her with it. I didn't scare her with it, but I gave her more information, more real information about diabetes than she had in the past. And I'm glad I did, because I saw her handle it maturely, and, you know, it sunk in a little bit. So I think every once in a while I might do that. I might, you know, just let her have it slowly. But every once in a while, when I see something like this, I think I'm going to have to step in and do a 15-minute, like, you know, masterclass on it. Like, just here's the important things you need to know. I think it's really cool that any of that's helping you or anybody else. But it's great that you can apply that stuff with injections still.
Well, yeah, and I mean, how much this show is helping this family. I mean, I can't imagine having basically an infant and not knowing anything about the disease, not having a background in it, yeah. You know, and they're doing great. And I don't know why we're stuck in the stagnant of, well, you got to be diabetic for a year to get a pump. I mean, that's the dumbest thing ever. You know, I want to see the support that says, you know, you shouldn't have a CGM. I think they should, if you're insurance and you can afford it, I think it should be a policy you leave with the CGM. And if you choose not to use it, that's fine. But we're going to write you the prescription, and we want you to know that this monitors it, and this. I don't know why, and that's what they're kind of. They didn't allude to anything negative, but that's what they're dealing with right now. They're like, oh, well, we're gonna. It's like, why are we putting him on daily injections? You know, he's in an infant stage. He can't talk.
No, I listen. It's just an old time idea that people hang on to. Like, you have to have this for a year, and then you can have this. In the end, it's a pump, it's a needle. Why does it matter how the insulin gets into you? It really doesn't, by the way. Like, yeah. What's the difference of how it happens? I like that. Like, once you figure out how to drive it like this, then we'll give you brakes. Well, you know what? The brakes would be nice to have on day one, if you don't mind.
Right.
So if I can throw this rock out the window on this chain and bring the car to a stop without hitting anything, then you're really going to appreciate how great I understand how this car works. And it's a simple idea. It's 2018. This stuff exists. If your insurance covers it, and like you said, if you want it, then it should be available to you. You shouldn't have to fight for it. You shouldn't have to go home and have some terrible experience and some struggle because somebody's giving you this arbitrary number you have to wait. And by the way, I tell people all the time, if anyone's listening, You don't have to abide by that. I can count on my hand 4 people in the last couple of weeks that I've spoken to who all ran into the same thing, and I gave them all the same advice. And I can say that this was advice. I said, just go back and tell the doctor, it's nice, I'm thank you for your concern, but now write the prescription for the insulin pump. And they always do. No one fights you. Like, it's just... It goes to show you how little the statement, oh, you have to wait a year. You have to wait a year. No, I don't. Oh, okay, here you go. Well, if it was so important, how come I got the script from you by saying, by fighting with you for 5 seconds? You know what I mean? Like, it just shows itself for how random the idea that you have to wait a certain amount of time is.
Right. I mean, when we get our license, they don't sit there and say, drive for a year, get in an accident, wear your seatbelt. I mean, I honestly do think CGMs, obviously in the artificial pancreas and all those things the technology is only working to improve our quality of life, lessen your chance of neuropathy. I mean, my last A1C was a 6.3.
That's excellent.
And I'm lucky that I had that. But there's going to come a day where I'm going to have I'm going to have some stressful months ahead of me. And, why not take the advantage point? Why not?
Listen, you'd want to give yourself every opportunity, I would think. And then from there, you'll decide how valuable it is or isn't for you. Listen, maybe you'll get a pump and just say, you know what, I was okay with insulin injections. I'm going to go back to it. You very well may do that. But you should at least try to know. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just assume that it's going to be one way, because you're just using your imagination to think up reasons not to do it. Seriously. I mean, I completely, I'm totally not coming down on you. I think you can tell that from our conversation, but I think some of the reasons you are worried about a pump are just you making up reasons why it's not going to work out, because there are plenty of people who do martial arts with an insulin pump. You know what I mean? Like, so it'll work out for you. It's just something new for you. When you see it, you'll decide, but I think you'll have a good experience. So.
Yeah, and it gives me an excuse to buy an iWatch. So
hey, you know what? More fun stuff that you can. I wrote off on our taxes this year our cell phone bills and the purchases of iPhones for medical devices. So,
right.
I mean, it didn't stop me from owing money, but it helped a little bit. Yeah, so Ryan, we're right up on an hour. I just want to ask you, is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to say that I maybe didn't hit for you?
No, thank you for doing the show. It's easy to follow, and I mean, it's an honest. The thing I love is that it's honest, candid information, and it's basically kind of like what I did with Baylor. Look, this is what I did. It worked for me.
Yeah.
And if it helps you, take it, and if it doesn't, find something else.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, don't if this isn't working for you, don't stick with me. Go somewhere and figure out something that does work. That's it's amazing advice. I appreciate that. I really do. I'm super psyched that you found the podcast and that you came on and told your story about training your own diabetes alert dog. Now I've got like a DIY pancreas episode, artificial pancreas episode. Now I have a DIY training dog. I never thought that would happen. It's really is, dude. It's commendable about the effort and the focus you had for it. So good for you. Let me ask you, are you that way in other parts of your life, or did just having this dog mean that much to you? You were able to put the time into it.
No, when I want something, I'm like, it's going to happen.
Okay. I got you. It's a big undertaking. Just to decide to train a dog like that is. Especially when you live with a woman who eventually would look at you and go, oh, we have this big lump in the corner now that does not check your blood sugar and is just eating a bunch of food and crapping all over the yard.
Yeah, and inside the house sometimes.
Yeah, you said this was going to be a diabetes alert dog, and it seems like it's a pillow in the corner. So that's excellent, man. Good for you. I want to tell you, I hope you have a lot of success with the new job endeavor. I hope you get on the force in Tennessee, and I hope you can fall back asleep after doing this, because I know you're probably tired.
Well, great. Well, hey, Scott, thank you so much. I mean, your podcast, just like that new family. When I was first diabetic, there was no check your podcast and let's share information. There was no, hey, this worked for me. Hey, when I switched to this and this, I had this problem. I didn't know there was a 2-hour warm-up period. And that's great, because now I go in with these realistic expectations.
Yeah, right. No, I think a lot of what you see people complain about online, whether it's about technology or just, anything really, things you do, pre-bolusing, anything like that, is they get this, like you said, there's a preconceived idea that this is going to work like this. So when it doesn't, instead of just seeing it still for the real benefit that it is, they see it as like some sort of a failure. And so I think you're right. Having all the information you can have is always a valuable idea. Thanks so much to Ryan for coming on the show and sharing his life with Type 1, his DIY dog, and everything else. Thank you, of course, to Dexcom and Omnipod. You can check them out at dexcom.com/juicebox and myomnipod.com/juicebox. Don't forget about that blog post I told you about, where you can see Arden's graph from the waffles, and you can see how we bolused, where we bolused. I want to wish you all a happy, happy Thanksgiving, and remind you to hang out for one more second to hear this from Dancing for Diabetes. You can find out more at dancingfordiabetes.com.
My name is Elizabeth, and at 10 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Shortly after, inspired by my middle school dance class, I came up with the idea to host a show to raise funds and spread awareness about diabetes. And Dancing for Diabetes started and has grown ever since. Raise your hand if you have type 1 diabetes. We operate a variety of programs year-round through Dancing for Diabetes, but my absolute favorite is our Kids and Teens dance program. All the kids and teens have type 1 diabetes. It's free. It's open to everyone in Central Florida, and it's a lot of fun to see these kids and teens get together, and they get to build these support networks and become free with their diabetes. Everyone in the room gets it, and I think that's really empowering for the kids and the teens in the room to be in an environment where they can still be a kid, but also be cared for and take care of their type 1 diabetes at the same time. What comes to your mind when I ask you to describe what type 1 diabetes makes you feel like? Not what it is, but what are words to describe diabetes?
I don't like diabetes because a girl at my school, she made fun of me and Michaela because we were diabetic. It's been a little embarrassing, and it's really hard to get through, and I don't really like it every day, but I battle through it because it's for my health. It's the only way I'd be here right now.
I don't like diabetes, but it does make me stronger.
It kind of makes me feel brave.
What scares you about diabetes?
Lows.
Yeah, lows.
Why is a low blood sugar scary?
Some lows, they just come right away, but I've had lows where I could be low for over an hour.
Yeah,
and
you don't notice them until you're like really
and you keep treating it, and like there's been times where like I'm 60, and then the next 15 minutes when I should be like in the 100s, I'm 42, and it's like it's scary.
For me, I was like feeling in my legs and everything, like you're losing consciousness. That's a lot of times what it feels like for me.
You're either like really tired or really hungry, like you're just like really drained, and you can't like really fatigue or anything. But
Ultimately, what's the worst case scenario of low blood sugar? I think that being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes forces kids to grow up a lot faster than their peers. So I think that this dance program allows the kids and teens an opportunity to be a kid, but at the same time see others that are their similar age and see how they're managing their type 1 diabetes, how they're making their decisions on their own. So I think that while the dance program offers the kids the opportunity to be kids in that class, they also get the opportunity to learn from others that are in their exact same situation. How many times do you get to be around this many people with type 1 diabetes?
These peoples and these peoples.
Here and one other place.
Only here, yeah.
Those of you that said when you are hanging out with others who have type 1 diabetes, where did you meet those friends?
Here.
What has been your favorite part about Dancing for Diabetes?
I think like meeting new friends, like others that has like the same disease as you, and learning more.
yeah,
Absolutely.
finally feeling comfortable like in a room, and like later in the year, like when people get close over, like, oh, are you okay? Like I heard your Dexcom, or like, are you okay? I heard your pump go off. Like it's kind of cool.
We're all like the same, and like there's nothing to like be uncomfortable about.
The show is incredibly entertaining and inspiring, but the best part is when the kids and teens walk out on stage and get to perform what they've been working so hard for. and remind us why we're all here and why we're working so hard year-round to ensure that they have better lives and one day don't have type 1 diabetes.
What do you want people to learn the night of Dancing for Diabetes?
Know that diabetes doesn't stop you from doing anything.
To know that we are not alone and we are strong.
To support everybody with diabetes so they can have a better life. To be yourself and make new friends. Diabetes doesn't stop me from doing anything. Diabetes won't control my life.
You're right.
My hope for all the kids and teens in our dance program is that their type 1 diabetes will never get in their way. It will never stop them from achieving any goals or dreams that they have, and that they will feel empowered by their type 1 diabetes to do more, to do better, and to do well for everyone, including themselves.
On the night of the show, I want people to know that diabetes doesn't define you. I want people to be inspired, and if they even have type 1, that they're not alone, and that we can do anything we put our hearts to.